We have an exciting show for you here today. We are going to be talking about One Piece. We're going to be talking about Bandai. And more importantly, we get a sneak peek to a new line of action figures.
この番組はご覧のスポンサーの提供でお送りしました。
As you know, my name is Chris Coelho, and I'm working with WonderfulSubs to bring you a wonderful interview. With me here today is Cisco Maldonado. Cisco, thank you so much for joining me here today. Take it away.
Hi, my name is Cisco Maldonado, and I am the Senior Director of Brand Strategy at Bandai America. And, you know, Bandai should not be a stranger to all of your fans. We've been creating the best action figures and anime representations for like the last 70 years, everything from Dragon Ball to Naruto to Gundam, you name it. One of the coolest lines that we've been able to come up with over the last 18 months or so is Anime Heroes, which basically is creating this brand, taking all of the best anime that folks know and love. And our latest entry is One Piece, because you can't talk about anime without talking about One Piece. And so we have 3 new figures that'll be coming out just in the next couple of months or so that we're really excited to talk about.
And that's awesome. Before we just dive into that a little bit deeper, I'd like to know a little bit more about you personally.
Okay.
So if it's okay, I would love to know, because you kind of have the dream job that every kid would ever want, right?
I've been very fortunate. Yeah, I could be like, you know, selling super cat food. Yeah, so I'm okay.
So if you wouldn't mind, just a little bit of a backstory about yourself and kind of how you got to where you are working with Bandai and just kind of in your current role.
So prior to Bandai, my biggest stint, I've always been in entertainment. And so prior to here, I was at Warner Brothers for almost 15 years. And I worked on like the theatrical new release movies. So everything from like the Harry Potter movies to like the Hangover movies and a lot of the DC Comics movies. I was part of that team, and so I worked for DC Comics for about 5 years. And in that role of DC Comics, my job was to expand the brand across all the different characters, whether it's video games, television, theatrical, live entertainment. And so it was in that role that I basically sort of honed my skills on how do you bring characters to life, right? And how do you talk to a fan base that is very, very protective of the characters that they love. And so when I was talking with the folks at Bandai, and I've only been here for like less than a year, it'll be a year next month, they like the fact that I know how to read the pulse of a spirited community with characters that arguably, right, are right on par with superheroes. And that's the cool thing about anime. And to your point, like, yeah, it is pretty cool that I get to like make the stuff that I grew up with as a kid. First on the comic book side, which I always was a comic book nerd, but then like the stuff that we do, I grew up with as well, right? So like Gundam is a huge property, right, that I get to work on now. And Dragon Ball and Naruto, the stuff that like I watched as a kid. Like I remember the Saturday morning TV shows and like the thing, you know. Like, who doesn't, right? And so the fact that like I'm working on stuff and I'm like, yeah, I help determine what the next action figure is going to be. So when they said we're going to do One Piece, I'm like, awesome, I love One Piece. And they're going to do a Luffy action figure. I was kind of like, Luffy's really skinny. Like, how are you going to do a skinny action figure? How are we going to do this? I saw the models, right? And we just got final product in and we're able to pull it off. Like, do you want to see a close-up of these guys?
Absolutely, yeah. If you can get us a little closer there.
Check that out, right? Like, it's Luffy.
Yeah. I absolutely already love the detail I can notice on his hair.
Yeah, like the hair, and he has like the hat in the back. And so even if you see like the package of Luffy, which is like right here, like, again, what Bandai does better than anybody else is a spot-on interpretation from the action figure to the animation. And then over here, right, we have Zoro, and he has the 3 swords and the detail and even like the packaging, right?
Absolutely, yeah. The detail on that, the colors, everything looks spot on to what you would notice from the anime for sure.
Exactly. And then if I can, I'm going to scooch over here, and then our favorite Sanji, everything is, even the detail, like his eyebrow is exactly where it needs to be. Of course, in the series, they like switched, I think like halfway through, and then they switched back.
Oh, yes,
right?
that's
And
right.
the little accessories and stuff. So like it's the little details like this that are like super cool. When I got the box to see an early shipment, this is actual live product. These aren't models. Like when you buy them in the store, this is what you're getting. I was pleasantly surprised because you never know until you open the box, right? Yeah, I mean, part of what we do, we figure out like what mean the characters. The first Anime Heroes line we came out had Saint Seiya and Naruto, right? And arguably, like, hey, people know what Naruto is, right? And Saint Seiya has its own following. And so when we figured out like what has to be that third property to come out there, right? Some fans who like Naruto, they might not know what One Piece is, right? Because it's a little bit different, right? Like age-wise and just episode number and that kind of stuff. So
Kind of appeals to different generations.
exactly. So we think that One Piece came out along at the right time, at the right place for Anime Heroes, right? Because even the Anime Heroes line, like we were nominated for Action Figure of the Year for the Anime Heroes line within like 18 months of our launch, right? Which is in the toy industry, like that's kind of hard to do.
Obviously, One Piece is definitely arguably one of the biggest animes out there.
Yeah.
So naturally to bring this line here to North America is just huge. But one thing I'd love to know a bit more about the toys specifically. So obviously you can touch them. What is it that you think is going to be the thing that really stands out? I know you made you talked about that a little bit, but I'd like to dive into that a little bit more. Just like when somebody picks up that action figure, what is it that they're going to notice immediately about it?
I think it's the little details, right?
Yeah.
So I'll use like Zoro here as an example, right? And so even when you look at the box, right? Like it obviously this is sort of, you know, in the marketing world, packaging is a big deal, right? So you want to be able to show what's cool about this thing. So Zoro, besides being like the greatest swordsman of all time, he fights with 3 swords at the same time.
Yes.
One of them is in his mouth, right? It works in the animation, right?
Yes.
But the fact that we are able to create a version of Zoro that has 3 swords, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just 3 swords, but depending on how you pose them, some of the accessories that are included is just the scabbard of the sword, right? And you actually can put the Suba back in there, right? Okay. So it's not like he's holding 3 swords and then he has like 3 handles on the swords at the same time. Like, no, we had the collector in mind, right? Because if you pull the sword out, you're holding one, but then you always have something at your hip right here, and we want to make sure that it's authentic.
Yeah, and I think that's just so important. As you mentioned, you briefly talked about that a little earlier, kind of that whole thing, you know, anime characters, specifically these ones are not superheroes, but anime is kind of falling into that same area where the comic book industry really boomed, you know, roughly 10 years ago is really when it picked up steam. Before that, you know, like, you know, we're nerds, you know, it's not the cool thing to like, but it's really picked up steam. Now everybody loves comic books, right? And I feel like anime is now heading in that same direction where just everyone is now picking up anime and being like, wow, because there's something out there for everybody.
Right.
And I think One Piece is great for that because, like you mentioned, there's so many characters. There's something for everybody.
And part of that, which is different than movies, because I come from the movie business too, like movies are an event, right? You go to the movies. But anime is a behavior. You watch anime. It's what you do, right? Some people watch soap operas, some people, and that's long form content. And anime is no different, right? And there's tons of anime that are out there that's just waiting to be found, right? And especially with people like staying at home a lot more and watching anime a lot because they can, right? People are discovering this treasure of content that's existed for years.
Yeah, I think that's great. And actually, kind of going off of that, would you be able to go into a little bit more detail of the accessories?
We want to be able to tell the story, right? You can't tell the story of Zoro without having his 3 swords, because that's just how it is, right? We're just beginning our story with Luffy, right? And Luffy, when he first started out, didn't even have the hat. We included his hat in the back, right? There are going to be different versions of all the different characters, and we want to make sure that we're true to that, right? So in the case of Luffy, right, like the hat is included, and then he has different pairs of hands, right? Whether he can have 2 fists or a hand like this, and he can do one of those things. And so we have Luffy there. The same with Sanji, right? So Sanji has, I think, 4 pairs of hands that you can sort of switch out, right? And then he has the little fire, right, that he has as a signature move. And his feet come off so that you can put his left or right foot in the fire.
Kind of speaking of that too, I don't have that specific line yet, obviously, but I do have a different line of your guys with the dragon stars.
Yeah.
You have the Krillin here. that I actually recently picked this up. So, and I like that same idea because you kind of mentioned the same thing with the extra hand pieces and the details. So if it's anything kind of like similar to this, then I think everyone's in for a treat with those guys, because I absolutely think this is a great little figure, because obviously you can pose them however you want.
With something like Dragon Stars that you're holding, there's like 50 different characters, right? And so the folks who are engineering the packaging of Krillin that you're holding are the same folks who are doing this, right?
Yes.
So it's the same folks, and they know what works with like something like Dragon Stars. And so as we have more characters in the line, right, the key art on the back is going to have more of them.
I know you can't really maybe mention the characters you're going to choose yet, but do you have an idea for the next line, like how many you kind of want to do for the next wave?
That's always sort of like an art form, right? So obviously there are hundreds of characters. We can't do all 100 or 800 or however many they are, for lots of different reasons, right? One is we want to make sure that we keep our fans happy, right? Like that's priority number one. Two is we want to make sure that we introduce characters that are iconic enough that people are going to be like, oh, what's this, right? If it's a version of a character or a character that only appeared in like one episode, regardless of how popular they may be, you have to like kind of do the math. I'm like, are enough people going to understand what this is in order to want to pick it up, right?
I know you're wearing a awesome shirt right now. Dragon Ball is also one of my favorites.
Yeah.
You got to represent that little Goku there, so that's awesome. Who would you say is your favorite One Piece character? If you had to pick one.
If I had to pick one.
Yeah.
I kind of like Zoro, right? Just 3 swords. Like it just like swords, right? Like I'm a guy, swords. Like swords are cool.
Absolutely.
3 swords is even better, right? Fighting with 3 swords at the same time, like that's kind of cool. But I have a soft spot for Tony Chopper. And well, like what is this? Like what is he? Is he a dog? I'm like, no, he's a reindeer. If you look at his story and his history, it's heartbreaking, you know? And I'm just like, oh my goodness, like that's what anime is, right? Like it takes you down a rabbit hole of character development to the nth degree. You can't not like them. Even better, if I had to have a t-shirt with one character, it would be Chopper.
Chopper's kind of good in that sense too. Chopper was ahead of the game when it came to the whole Baby Yoda craze.
Yeah.
Chopper was already there.
He was the original Baby Yoda. That's right.
Okay, and then one more thing. So these characters, pick 3 characters from the anime world that they don't necessarily have to be your favorite, but you kind of hold them close to your heart.
Ooh, from any anime.
From any anime, any anime that you guys handle.
Amuro from Gundam.
Oh, deep cuts. Okay.
Right? Like we do all the Gunpla stuff, right? And Bandai is Gundam. Like we created the concept of the toy to launch the show and the show to reinforce the toy, right? Like it started there, right? I like Vegeta a lot from Dragon Ball. Just because he's so measured. He's not overly cautious, but he's a thinker, right? Goku's different. Goku's just like, yeah, let's go, right? And Vegeta's like, whoa, like I agree, but before we agree, let's kind of work through the paces, right? And so I would like to see a little bit of myself in Vegeta, in the sense that like you look at the situation, you figure out, you do all the analysis, and then you act, right? You just don't get caught up in your thoughts. And for the third one, maybe Luffy.
Okay.
Just because he is such the dreamer, like I'm gonna be king of the universe, you know, and I don't know how I'm gonna get there, but I'm gonna go. So I think to have a mashup of all those 3, I think takes the best out of each property into qualities that we all admire, which is why anime does as well as it does.
Vegeta by far had the greatest arc, going from villain to anti-hero to hero. So his arc was incredible. And then kind of mentioning with Luffy there, I find Luffy kind of has a nice mix between Naruto and Goku. So he kind of has that eagerness of Goku, but he kind of has that like goal he wants to be, his goal of what he wants to be with Naruto. So I kind of like that about Luffy as well.
I'm sure that someone's going to be like, you didn't talk about this one show and that one character, like there's always going to be stuff, right? So if I had to like write a dissertation on it, I'd have to really do my due diligence. But I guess top of mind, that's what I'm thinking of.
And I think that's kind of one of the beauty things of anime is there's something out there for everybody, right? Yes. So if you like the action, you get the action. If you like something else, you like something else. But I want to also know, where can we pick these up and when are they coming out? Yeah,
so they're available on pre-sale right now, right? So whether on Amazon or like GameStop or any store that like pre-sells, go to our webpage, go to our Twitter feed and click and you'll take you there. And then it'll be in stores around that April timeframe. Certain stores reset a week or two early, but around that April timeframe, they'll be available if you actually want to physically walk in a store and get one.
If you have to go pick up one right now, which one are you leaning towards? Are you going to go for the Luffy? Are you going to go for the Zoro? You only can have one.
If I could only have, you know what? If I could only have one, I would go with Luffy. Zoro's going to handle himself. He can handle himself. Before he met Luffy, he was doing just fine. But I think Luffy is the most iconic character, and so I'm kind of rooting for him right now.
Yeah, that's fair. I think for me, I'm gonna pick up either a Zoro or a Sanji, because Sanji and food. Well, who doesn't love food, right?
Exactly.
So.
Hey, no, like yeah, I'm not like, you know, taking anything away from Sanji, because he would wipe the floor with me. But if I had to choose only one, I think I'd gravitate towards that.
So yeah, thank you so much again for this opportunity. I really appreciated it. And I would love to do this again sometime in the future. If you have any other announcements, we can definitely, do this again.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
Everybody, have you a great day.
Thanks.